So how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Uh, Not bad. Taking it day by day, that's for
That's the
sure.
thing, isn't it? Yeah.
This is really it's unbelievable. I mean, everybody I speak to, if I can speak to them, um, yeah, it's there's no book on this. There's no playbook to follow. So it's either people are short circuiting, and they don't know what to do, or they're exhausted, like they're really exhausted. And I think I fall into that camp. I'm just exhausted, just like I'm sure you are.
Sure.
It's crazy.
Well, you've got more on your plate, I think, than I have at the moment,
Well,
truthfully.
but listen, I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully I can lend a useful perspective, both as a parent and as a
Well,
superintendent.
that'd be wonderful. You've gathered, haven't you, from what you were sent, what this is all about?
I do. I love it. I'm so thankful you're doing this. When I read the Utah parent, what she was explaining to you,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that is probably one of the things that I hear most often is, they don't know how to keep up. They don't know what to do. They're exhausted. That is a narrative that I think is threaded throughout, whether they're in Utah, here in New York, or I think around the world. So I'm glad you're doing this.
Well, the thing is that families and parents especially are stressed out anyhow by the whole situation of being locked down.
Yeah.
And this additional stress they feel of having to take over supervising their kids' education from home. I think it was Natalie in Utah who said that, I was talking to her yesterday. She said, "This isn't homeschooling. This is crisis schooling. This isn't a choice that most people have made. It's been foisted on them." And it's that I wanted to talk to you about, if we can. Well,
Sure.
two things really. I mean, one is obviously just how you're doing and how you're managing it yourself, but also we're covering a range of. Oh, by the way, I ought to say how much I enjoyed your book before we get into all this.
Thank you, and thank you for the very kind words. Even though uh, I was very thankful for that. Pazzi had some nice things to say about it too, which I'm really thankful for. So I mean, you are all the people like myself look up to. So it really means a lot. So thank you.
Oh, delighted. When is it being published?
It's coming out May 1st, and actually they wanted to push it back, but I pretty much told them I'd drive over there and put them in a sleeper hold if they did. And that's because I really believe a lot of our educators need something, just a reminder to just take a deep breath and,
Yeah.
and persevere through this.
And who's publishing it?
So it's BA Publishing it's in Canada. It's interesting. I started with Corwin, then I went to EDU Press, and they just wanted to change too much of it. Like they wanted to make it very technical and more research based, and that's not the way I wanted to go. And then Routledge actually was kind enough to say they would take me on, but they couldn't publish it, I should say, until the spring of 2021. So a friend of mine said, "Listen, there's this really great independent publisher in Toronto. He's taking on some new authors," and I met with him, and so connected and listen, I like Canadians better than some Americans, so I'm very thankful. So
yeah, well, that's wonderful.
Thank you.
So it's about May the 1st.
May the 1st. That's right. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's funny because my Board of Education is a little reluctant for me to release it. During this time, and I totally get that. So part of the proceeds will go to the Down Syndrome Foundation. I think my daughter has Down syndrome, one of my many kids. So proceeds would go there. And then
how many kids do you have?
Too many. I'm ready to sell them on eBay. Actually, I won't even sell them. I'll just for free. So I have 5 total. I have 3 who live with us right now. And it's my 2 youngest ones, my 4 and my 7-year-old, that is making me age like Barack Obama in like 4 years. But it's the best. But I mean, those are the challenges clearly I'll talk about. Yeah. But I think I said, at one point, Piaget would have been very proud. I had all my kids in all 4 stages at once. So
that's great. But you've got 5 altogether.
I do. I'm ready to disown one, but yeah, one in college. My oldest is in college
Yeah.
at a university. She's a freshman, and
Yeah.
my youngest is 4 in pre-K who thinks she's in college, and
Yes.
and a freshman. So yeah, 4 girls, 1 boy.
Wow. Well, good luck with that.
Well,
Really.
thank you. I think my wife and I think we're Amish at this point. So yeah.
I'm one of 7.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, you win.
I know. I mean, we don't have 7, but I'm one of 7.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No.
No. We couldn't do that. But
Oh,
yeah, I mean, but growing up in Liverpool, people had large families. There's no religious basis for it. It's not like that. My parents were practicing Catholics. I mean, they weren't at all. They weren't
yeah.
Catholic. They weren't anything. They just got on. I think that was it. And this is before Netflix. So
just before they binge watched. Yeah. No. I
true.
totally get it. It's I think generationally, it's just well, it's too expensive now. I mean, I think they looked at the price point for raising 1 child, and I almost threw up. So, when you multiply it by 5, yeah, it's
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, if you don't do the math, it's not good.
no,
We've tried it. We've tried it. It's, when you picture this life you might have had with
that's
those
right.
resources at your disposal.
Yes. That's why I'm blissful, and I never think of those things anymore.
Don't look down. It's not a good thing.
It's not.
Well, what I wanted to ask is a whole bunch of things, but I don't want to take your whole morning on it. I want to ask you various things. Let me just flag them up. A lot of the questions that parents are having include what exactly is expected of them from the school district's point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, Natalie there in Utah said she'd had, I think, 74 emails in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
With worksheets, and her kindergartner was supposed to be on 5 different websites for reading. So people are tearing their hair out.
Yeah.
About this. And of course, it differs from school district to school district and state to state, no doubt, and
It does.
country. But I'd like to get your take on that. What's the position here? What are families required to do? And do they need to follow all this stuff to the letter? Should they be replicating school at home or doing something else? What should be their priorities? We can go on in that direction, but maybe could I just ask you, what position does this put you in? I mean, you're a new superintendent in this district.
That's right.
And
Very high performing school district, by the way.
yes.
Whatever that means. I will say, yeah. So this is the Gold Coast of Long Island. So this is Great Gatsby area.
Yeah.
Where everybody is either a doctor, they're a banker, or they're a surgeon, or all 3 at once. And the reality is, for many of their kids, if they're not taking 5 AP courses by the time they're in 10th grade, there's something wrong. So the expectations here, I don't think, are universally found in other districts, even where I am on Long Island, for sure. That wouldn't have been the case in my previous district where you were before. So I really do think it is going to vary from place to place. I mean, so I can talk about that, but I can talk about at least what I think is most important during this, as far as expectations, from a school district, what they should be, and what they potentially are, because it really does run a continuum.
Yeah.
And depending on where you are, and but I have some thoughts, some different edges around that I'm thinking of.
Broadly speaking, there's a difference, isn't it, between expectations and requirements?
Oh, sure.
What are people required to do in your district?
Well, so in my school district, what they're required to do is the work. See, there's two expectations. For the first 2 weeks, when we didn't know how long this would be potentially, was review, right? So there's the edge of, we're just going to send out work that's more review based. And then once we realize that, we're not coming back anytime soon, then the switch gets flipped to, well, now we need to instruct, right? We need to, I hate to say this, but in many cases, plow through this curriculum, which I don't agree with, but that's what teachers are thinking. It's on their calendar. If I'm not here by this time, they get very, very anxious, because they're not where they should be. So right now we are in instructional mode, and that is causing, I think, a lot of concern, because then there's, how do you do that? How do you actually instruct if and when, because you have some teachers unions who don't want this type of communication with their students, you know, whether from a video chat standpoint, they don't want that. Privacy concerns, both for the teacher and the student. So in many cases, there are some school districts that don't even allow this type of communication. What they'll do is more of an audio. And then there's the frequency of how often do you do it? You know, does a teacher have this type of communication every single day? Or is it maybe one time a week for a check-in? For us, I'm trying to take a balanced approach. I'm not trying to go to the extreme here or to do nothing, like workbook pages people will send out. I'm more concerned about here from a humanistic standpoint of wellness and checking in to make sure kids are okay, giving them some review work, but also if they have the ability to actually instruct if they're doing it this way. And we're finding it's not easy. I think there are some parents who want teachers to come in. I say, like on a SWAT team, like on a rope coming through their ceiling, to actually sit down with them for 4 or 5 hours a day. And that's just, A, it's not possible. B, I think it's just horrible practice. So for us, it's a balanced approach. We're checking in a few times a week with our kids. We have some new instruction. They're using, and you have to understand too, Ken, many of these teachers, they weren't prepared for this. So not a lot, many of them aren't, you know, from a technological standpoint, they're not savvy this way. So they have to learn on the fly. So we're providing professional development for our teachers as they're doing this in real time. There are so many unintended consequences for this. So I'm trying to go slow where some parts of our community wanted to go in 8th gear. And I'm chugging along between 1st and 2nd, as far as I'm concerned. And it's getting mixed reviews.
Well, one of the things I'm keen for this series to do is facilitate at least a better understanding between the various people involved in this whole situation now, of how it appears to people from their different perspectives. So, you know, the parents I've been speaking to obviously are feeling a lot of pressure from the school system, and complaining in some cases that they're getting all of this rather disorganized series of requirements and worksheets and demands for grades and so on from numerous teachers. But the teachers themselves, that's what I find interesting just now here, is the teachers themselves haven't gone away. They're still employed. And so they're under pressure, are they not, from the school district to deliver, however they can find a way to do that. Has the school district, in your experience, relaxed any of the pressures on the teachers themselves?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That, I'm glad you brought that up, because I believe the teachers, in many cases, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They're in purgatory, really. You know, it's like in some cases they can have administrators saying do more, 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 and then in the same breath they have to figure out how to do this in real time. How do they check in with their kids? How do they create this new way of learning or interacting with kids and make sure they have assignments, and then to receive that information? And then the other part is, and this is the narrative I'm really trying to focus on, is many teachers, like myself, they have lives outside of here. So they are in their home or their apartment or wherever they are with their own kids. And in many cases, they don't have enough technology to have their kids do what they have to do. So if you are a teacher and you're learning this in real time, and then you're teaching your class, and if you're a middle school teacher, you know, you can have 125, 130 students, you know, 4 or 5 different classes, creating lesson plans for that, video chatting with them. And then on the flip side, receiving emails from teachers for your own kids trying to figure this out. That is a recipe for, I just think, disaster. So what I'm doing here, and what our school district, I think, is doing a really great job, not only thanking our teachers often, and our parents and our PTAs thanking our educators often, because they need to know that they are very appreciated, is to have parents understand that this is all new, that I believe if they are patient enough, each week will get better and better, whatever that means. You know, I think we'll become more accustomed to this new norm, and to allow us to go slowly, and we don't want to accelerate and go so fast, because what happens here, and I think in many places, they try to keep up with the Joneses. You know, they're seeing what this school district is doing over here, this district over there, and they're so busy comparing themselves. Well, I heard this district has 5 hours of online, and students are turning everything in every day, and they're getting grades. And I'm like, well, I think it's an urban legend. I don't know how many districts are actually doing that, and if they are, is that really best practice for teachers and for kids? But the other part, Ken, that I think is really important is the parents. Like, these parents, whether it's here or anywhere else, they have to be overwhelmed. They have to be overwhelmed with the magnitude of what they have to do for 6 weeks, maybe even more, because it's one thing to, go, like, all their routines are disrupted. Everything that if they go to work, that routine is disrupted. If they're home, those routines are disrupted, and the child's routines are disrupted as well. And that is something that I think is critically important, that educators and administrators, superintendents, boards of education have to understand, is that if that part of their life hasn't been ironed out yet, if those basic needs haven't been met, as Maslow would say, it's really hard to do anything well. And we have to give parents and students and teachers permission to be imperfect. I think that's really important, and that message has to come from above, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm sure that's exactly right. I mean, do you think that school districts should be continuing kind of with sort of business as usual, but providing it differently, online and so on? Or do you think they should be taking a different tack now?
I do. I think two different things. I think this is a great opportunity for us to really reframe and figure out what's most important as an educational system, or as an organization. And so I would say at this point, schools should, I mean, clearly we're not going to have students learning 6 hours a day. That's just not feasible. I believe if school districts were to universally, like if there was some remote learning plan that, let's say, the whole world was going to encompass, I would say a small portion of that should be dedicated toward what we traditionally do in school. And this is a conversation I want to have with our community, and hopefully at a broader base at some point, to allow students and children to do things that they've never done before, or that they've never had the time to do before, which is to try new and different things, to figure out, as you would say, what their talents and passions are, because now they have, clearly they have a lot of time to do so, in many cases. And to figure out those ways of flipping the classroom per se. So maybe not getting information from their teacher per se, but there are other conduits or other ways for them to figure things out. I will say, even with my own kids, like they've explored Khan Academy or other types of technologies that they find very, very interesting. Like, they're learning new things, like these 20-minute little snippets of learning and relearning, and giving them the ability to do so from a technology standpoint is great. I was on a chat yesterday with Peter Gray and Jonathan Haidt and a few other really wonderful people, thinking about how can we seize this opportunity, to really reframe what education looks like. And certainly with Peter, it's about how can we have more play, as far as integrated for the day for our kids who are even home. Now, when I say play, I don't mean like going out and playing marbles, even though that's wonderful, but we're talking about ways to try things in a playful way, to learn in new constructs that you just couldn't do in school, like project-based learning, to dig into things, longitudinally for more than 40 minutes, and then the bell rings and you drool in Pavlovian way and then move on to the next thing. Now you could have a nice block of time to really dig deeply into something, and we need to take advantage of that time and helping our teachers develop the capacities to do that. And I think we will certainly do that, and my hope in other places we do too.
And are you able to give advice to parents along those lines? Because I know some families have the impression that they have to replicate school at home. And of course, as you say, a lot of the bells ringing and organizational habits that you see in schools are designed for mass systems. If you're a small group in a home, there's absolutely no need to make school feel like that.
There isn't. And, I think that that messaging, I believe, has to come from the school or the school district for sure. And I think it really comes down to expectations. What are the expectations? And I don't know how clear they are, because to be honest with you, I'm not sure how many school systems know what the expectations are. Because it's one thing, like I said before, to focus on review, and then there's another thing to introduce instruction, and then there's the whole area of grading, and what does that mean, right? So, if teachers are sharing information, if the expectation is from a school district that a teacher is supplying work, and a student has to then work on something and then hand it back to the teacher, and they're going to be graded on that, what does that look and sound like? And the reality is, we never planned for that, or I should say, many systems haven't planned for that. The reality, as you know too, is that some of our kids don't have technology at all.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have this at home. So what does that mean for them from an equity standpoint, from a parity standpoint? So one of the things we grapple with, I think, with my school district right now, and many others, is that, even though we are somewhat affluent, right, but there are pockets of where we are. We have 20% free and reduced lunch, where students, I know for a fact, have zero technology. So we have to supply that for them, which we have. We have to supply Wi-Fi, and then assume that they'll know how to manage that. The parents will know how to manage that, and then to receive information, and then grades, and then or the work, and then send it back. Right now, we're grappling with, for the third quarter, or the third portion of our year, how do you grade our students? How do we grade our kids in the fourth quarter, when we know for a fact, if a teacher is teaching something, I mean, it can land on students in a totally different way, and then they're going to be graded on that, because there's no way to find out if they really understand what's happening. Like right now, all our state tests are stopped, right? So our 3 through 8 testing, thank goodness, has stopped. And then our Regents exams, our exit exams in New York State, we have 5, right? So that's been placed on hold. That by itself is sending shockwaves through high school teachers, as far as how they go about teaching and how they go about learning. What does that actually mean? And do things have to be, work have to be graded? Yeah.
Because these issues are different for kids at different points in the system, aren't they? For juniors and seniors, again, I've had parents asking about this, who are looking ahead to apply to college. How much of an impact do you think all this is going to have on their prospects, and what should parents be doing to mitigate it?
I think I'd like to think that the universities are figuring out ways to look at transcripts, high school transcripts, during this time. Because I can tell you right now, there are some school districts for the third and fourth quarter, if that's the way that their high schools work, where they will go to a pass-fail system. They won't have a letter grade or a numerical, score. And I think that's very fair. And clearly they'll have to take that into account. But I think, again, it lends itself to, it's not just grades, it's what students have done outside of the classroom. So, if they're civic minded, if they're doing things, if they're part of the Key Club, if they're in honor societies, all those things I think are still important, and they'll be counted for. And clearly the universities and the school systems, the K through 12 systems, have to talk about what this means for their children. I can tell you right now, our guidance department, and as I'm sure many guidance departments, are really trying to figure out what the transcripts are looking like, and they're talking to universities, as you and I are speaking right now, to make sure those students who are going to universities, whether they are, Ivy League or state level universities, what that means. But this is going to recalibrate and really change, I believe, at least for incoming seniors and even juniors right now, what that means to enter colleges. I think what has to happen, though, universally, is that people have to just take a collective deep breath and let us try to figure this all out, because we're trying to answer questions that we have no idea what the answers will be. We're waiting for state education departments to tell us what's happening, and then by the time we share it with parents, it's almost old news. So the way that we communicate and digest what's happening at the state level or at the university level, we need time to flesh that out.
What's your sense, Michael, of what's going on at that policy level? Are there serious discussions happening? Are they coordinated, or are people just wildly improvising at the moment?
Yeah, are they coordinated? I don't know. Are they happening? For sure they are. There's no doubt. I think they're scrambling right now. I also believe, because I don't know how many people actually foresaw, this pandemic or anything like this happening, where it really short circuits everything. I would like to think, though, they are putting provisions in place that account for seniors who heavily rely on their grades.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, our students who are, let's say, middle of the road, right? Where they are a lot more flexible in allowing students to enter the university. I really believe by the time June rolls around, which for many school districts in the States, that's too late, because seniors have graduated by then.
Yeah.
The southern states, it's end of May, early June. So it's happening right now. I just think, I'm hoping that they're being very, very flexible, and I have a feeling they are, because our state education department in New York has been incredibly flexible, which, to be honest with you, I'm very surprised and thankful for, but they have been so far. So I'd like to think that would trickle up to the universities as well.
So what would you advise parents to at the moment, given that there's no, excuse me, real clarity yet at the state or even the district level on how particularly the world's going to shake out for seniors and for those applying to college? What do you think parents should be doing in the interim while they're waiting for the air to clear?
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to like this answer, but this is what I'm sharing with my parents, and I'm sharing with my own family.
Yeah.
Is that we have to focus on the things we can control right now, and there's a lot we can control in our lives. What's happening with the conversations at the university level, we can't. So for us to worry about that, it won't do any good. My message is, we need to focus on you, meaning the parent. I'm telling parents to actually take care of themselves so they can take care of their kids. Mm-hmm. That is first and foremost. And as silly as that sounds, I think it's incredibly important, because again, we have parents who are ravaged by this. If they have a loss of a job, if the income has been depleted, and then from just a social and emotional standpoint, they've been, they're just all over the place. Right now, they need to take care of their families, take care of themselves, have their children do the best that they can at this given moment, because I believe most schools will be flexible as far as work that is coming back, and to have a sense of balance as far as what their children are doing as far as schoolwork. I do not advise their children to be online too long. I just think they need to focus more on their mental health, because once we re-enter and we start moving forward and we have more answers, then they'll be more ready and more focused on what they actually can do. And I just think that's incredibly important. And if they can do that, I think it'll help them not only in the short term, but I think it'll help them longitudinally.
How are you tackling all of that at home with your kids?
Not very well. It's one thing to offer advice. It's another thing to take your own advice. My wife and I, she's a assistant superintendent of schools too. So, between the two of us, even though I look so young, we have 50, I'm kidding, we have 50 years of experience between us. And I'm telling you right now, it's very hard. We have a schedule in place, but we have to be very flexible with that schedule. And
That's at home with your children.
Yeah, we have to. We had a big Post-it, right, with the schedule. First day, that was pretty much in the garbage by the third or fourth day, and you have to be okay with that. Like, at first we weren't okay with it, because that's just not the way we're wired. But you learn over time.
Step 2, get rid of the schedule. Yeah.
That's right, and we have, and so we are. I think to our credit, we take shifts at times. I mean,
Yeah.
she's on the phone often. I'm on the phone often, but you know, we're finding a balance with what our kids are doing. And as you know, one of my kids are students. One of my children has special needs, so there's a lot of services coming in as well, and you have to coordinate that. But it's, you know what it is? It's a 16-hour shift, 7 days a week when you're operating this way. And that's why when I said, you know, you have to take care of yourself first, you really do. And we're trying to do that now. Like, you know, by just taking an hour to ourselves, walking or meditating, or, you know, finding a hole somewhere to just, you know, to just breathe. But
Yeah.
that does,
Vital, isn't it?
does help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does, even though I'm sure it's not minute by minute, what does the schedule cover? What are the essential things that you're trying to make sure your kids do every day?
I would say right now, if we're looking at it in totality, as far as minutes or hours, about 2.5 hours of schoolwork, and that could change from day to day as far as what that looks like. But that is the amount of time. The routines that we have as far as getting up in the morning and everything else, that all remains the same. But as far as the work, we try to get a lot of it done in the morning. There's a nice morning block. Then there's time to play and for them to explore, to do what they want to do. That's self-directed, which is incredibly important. And then, you know, they have something to eat. Actually, they're eating all day, which is a little frightening. But yes, but you know, they have time to eat, and then we go back at it again as from an academic standpoint, and they have like another maybe hour or so in the afternoon. But there is time. We have built-in time for them to play and to go outside, not go outside like, you know, around, but within our yard. And there are lots of arts, lots of creative opportunities for them. So there's a lot of play. There's a lot of music. So that is, to be honest with you, that's the silver lining in all this. They are getting to explore, and we want them to try new and different things. And our house has become really like a laboratory for them to try new things. And it seems to be working well. But I'm telling you, by 9 o'clock, we're sticking an IV drip in our arms and we're ready to go to bed.
Sure. The joys of learning from home.
That's right.
You know, you're a long-time critic, as I am, as you know, of some of the principles and practices of established systems of education. This is the first time the whole system has been shut down. I mean, that's to say that going to school and all the other rituals. The first time a lot of people come off the treadmill, and it's thrown a lot of things up into the air. Do you see the possibility that some good will come of all of this? And when people head back to school, I mean, I know people often say it'd be good to get back to business as usual, but in many ways, business as usual doesn't meet the need anymore, does it? So do you think this is a moment as well for some genuine creative leaps in education?
I think, and I know you speak about this often, you know, everything is interrelated, right? So when you see the earth healing itself, like the water's becoming clearer, pollution starting to, you know, evaporate in LA or, you know, in China, right? You're like, okay, there's something to be said for that. You know, there's a lot of healing going on. I think in many ways, there are several silver linings to all this. You know, one is recalibrating what your purpose is and what's most important to you. So to answer your question, I think it depends. I think it depends on a few different things. First and foremost, I think it depends on school leaders and school boards, if you're in the United States, that if you've always wanted to change the system, but you always use the system as an excuse not to, then we will remain the same. I believe if there are people in positions of influence that really seize this opportunity, I think, actually, I know in my heart of hearts that it can. It can definitely happen. And it has to happen, to be honest with you. So I am hopeful. I am definitely hopeful that this will happen, because you know what's going to happen, right? So a year from now, all these reports will come out. You know, we're learning about this is what happened during this time in positive ways and negative ways. The reality is, my hope is that there's a real focus on wellness.
Mhm.
There's a focus on wellness and what it means. Like, I always go back to the Finnish system when I was there. Like, their focus on wellness is so profound. It's cultural as well, not just within the schools. And I'm hoping we learn that is one of the most important things, because it's very hard to function in life if your mental health or your physical health is not there to support whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great opportunity for us to recalibrate. We just need more people banging that drum after this is over, because if we go back to the way it was, I will be profoundly upset and sad, to be honest with you.
It's interesting. That's exactly right. It's interesting, isn't it, that like you're saying in your own district, but it's by no means exclusive to the district. Uh, Ironically, that some of the greatest pressures for the status quo come from parents, because they're bought in to the old narrative that if your child doesn't go to college, life is over. They're hobbled forever, and it has to be the best college. And we all, you and I know what the reasons are behind that. And it might be that now that parents are being thrown into the front line of education, they're having to look up close and personal at how the system's playing out day by day. It'll give them some genuine pause for thought. In among having to manage the new pressures that are on them, they may well come out with a different view. And that for all the hardship, would be quite a good outcome, wouldn't it? Insofar as there will be some.
Well, I will say, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I think systems do change when parents, if we get to a tipping point where they want to see it happen, it will.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a public education system where it's run by school boards.
Yeah.
So I would agree that is where, gosh, right away I go right to leadership, and you can't forget. I mean, that's probably more important, to be honest with you, is what the parent base is, because it's true. I think they really understand the value of teachers now, right? So I think because everybody's a resident expert. Well, I went to school for 13 years as a student, so therefore I know everything about education, which is clearly not true. But yeah, now that they're doing it, they're like, wow, there's a lot more to this, and we value them more. And the other thing that I think is incredibly important too, that we can't forget, because if we're talking about, let's just say 20% of the generation that we're serving right now is more anxious, depressed, or suicidal than any generation before. Whether one of the variables that are responsible for that is the system itself or other things that are there, we can't go back to the way it was if that is where we are, because we are not doing, I think, a fair job at all to work with our kids in that capacity. So if there's a way we can really go and focus on project-based learning, problem-based learning, have embraced the arts much more than what we are right now, and hold them in the same regard as an AP science course or a math course or an IB course, I think we will make that shift. That never would have happened unless something like this, ironically enough, hit us this way.
Yeah. Makes the system stall. It's a good time to look at it. I know that you are. I mean, I just want to ask you quickly while you're here. The new book comes out in May. It's addressed to leaders in education, isn't it? But it's also very relevant for parents, isn't it?
I think so. I really do. The 12 principles that I speak about really has to do with some of the inner work and then some of the outer work. I really believe a lot of us, whether we were parents or whether we're working in a system, in a school system, it's we forget that inner journey that is incredibly important. And in order to do that, we have to take time to do it. And what better time than right now to take that journey? So, for school leaders or for parents, it's really figuring out what the purpose of education is to you, and then what we can do to support what that means. And I'm hoping the book resonates with people. I'm hoping it does, because it's very conversational, as opposed to like reading like a dissertation.
Well, I assume you're starting each day now of the lockdown by reading sections of the book to your kids. I think they'd value it enormously, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, it's a read aloud actually, and it actually puts them right to sleep. So it's great. It's like a great sedative.
I mean, how many kids get to have two school superintendents looking after them all day?
Yeah, I don't think they would wish that on their worst enemy, but yes, that is true. They do. Lucky them.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. It's been great.
It's been wonderful, and it's always a pleasure to speak with you. And thank you for doing this. I think it'll provide a wonderful service for educators and all parents out there.
Well, let's hope so. And we're just we're starting to put it all together now. We're going to get the first episode out next week, and we'll just take it step by step, like we're all doing. And but it's been great, and I might come back to you if you don't mind at some point.
Whenever you can, I really appreciate it, and stay safe and be well. Thank you very much.
I love Dr. Hines' place behind you.
Thanks.